Welcome to Captivate the Mic with Elaine Williams. I think you are going to love this episode where I interview my cousin, Melissa Williams, who is a 10 times world champion. It's going to be all the things. And we're doing a leadership women's retreat in May at her beautiful ranch in California. And I'm just delighted. It's so fun to hear her stories and to learn even more about her badassness. And I think you're going to love this episode. So please enjoy. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Captivate the Mic. I am here with my beautiful, brilliant, talented, ridiculously powerful cousin, Melissa Williams. Melissa!
Hello.
No pressure.
After
Nope. I
that
know.
introduction, what's left to say?
I know. Sometimes it's like I used to have these long intros before comedy, and they're like, maybe you don't want to say all those credits. There's a lot of pressure.
It
So,
makes me think of, and here's Daenerys Stormborn Targaryen, Mother of Dragons, Breaker of
but
Chains, leader.
is that Crown of Thorns or whatever? Or Game of
Right.
Thrones?
Game of Thrones. That's
Okay.
right.
I only caught a little bit of it, but when I was in Croatia, I was like, oh my God, I have to watch it now. But anyway, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. And I'm so excited because you and I are working on the most amazing, dynamic, fabulous retreat leadership program. So,
It's
so that's
because
why I
there's
was
so
like,
many wonderful things about it. It's
oh
it's
my
it's
gosh. And
hard to capture it in
it is. And
in a,
every
in
time I
one
talk about it,
tagline.
yeah, every
Yeah,
time I talk about it, people are like, send me the link. We will get that to you
right.
ASAP. I thought, you know what? Let me introduce you to people. Some people watch on YouTube, some people are just going to listen, and we're probably
Right.
going to do some short clips of this. I've had the privilege of knowing you since we were babies, and you're so accomplished and you're so humble. You've been around horses forever, and you have over 10 different world championship titles with many different breeds. And like
There's Lobo. Sorry.
champion. We're talking like Olympics. Oh yeah, and there's Lobo who is gonna love having people to pet him, you
Big
know,
time.
at the
Yes. Yeah.
retreat. So if people, first of all, would you just tell us what it's like growing up learning with horses? Like you always loved horses, and then you started competing with American Saddlebreds, and you shared a little bit about that. But can you tell us more, like what you were getting from that, what it was like as an adolescent?
Right. The love of horses really, I can't say I got it from my mother or my father or anybody else in my family that who I know. Fortunately, my parents were very outgoing and they were very giving and hey, oh, you want to try riding? Okay, sure. And as far as I can remember, I loved animals in general and especially horses. And I don't think that's unique to me. I think
Right.
they're just a magical
Most little
creature
girls
and
are like, I love
right,
horses. Right.
whether it has wings and a horn or glitter on its feet or whatever, Black Beauty, my friend Flicka, whatever it is, they're fascinating, beautiful animals. I've always loved them and I wanted to ride. And then I just ended up at a barn that had saddlebreds and American saddlebreds. And eventually, after riding for a while, they asked if I wanted to show, and I said sure. And my journey in the show horse world was wonderful. I was very blessed, very lucky, and I loved competing. I'm not a super competitive person. I'm not going to lie, it's always fun to win, but
Yeah.
I was more about the journey, which I didn't really when you're young, you don't think about these
Right.
things,
You're just
right?
in it, doing it.
Yeah,
Right.
whether I won or got disqualified, I still wanted to do it again. I just really loved the relationship with the horse. And then as the years went by, I increased my skill. My parents got nicer horses or a little bit more quality. And that helps as far as the result goes. And when you're competing, that's funny because the competitive aspect of it, it's a little different than most sports because if you're having a bad day, whether you're even if you're just trail riding your horse, but especially if you're competing, and then as the levels get higher and the demands get more intense, obviously that's part of it. But we can have bad days, the horse can have a bad day. But if you can't really take it out on them, you can take your soccer ball and give it a good kick if you're mad and you're having a tantrum. But soccer ball is not going to do anything.
Right.
You treat your horse like that, and maybe the next time you have a ride, they remember. And
Right.
so I think in that way, it taught me a lot growing up about controlling yourself, controlling your emotions, controlling your fears. And there's always think about it, learn from if it's not the experience you want, think about it, learn from it, and then try better next time. And sometimes that next time isn't the golden ticket. Sometimes my most hard fought successes with the horse show world, with competing, were my most memorable moments. It was those times where I thought, I'm never gonna figure this horse out.
And then
And there's
right.
expectations. And this horse, I know this horse has talent. I believe I have talent. Why are we not? Why is my trainer upset? Why are my parents fussing at the train? What can I do to be better? And then finally, when the marble does fall in the hole, it's, "Oh my gosh, it
Oh,
worked. It worked." Yeah, and it may not have worked the next time, but the fact that it worked at all was so rewarding. As you mature and you learn to, okay, relax a little bit about this, but it's funny because as successful as I was becoming as a competitive equestrian, I always wanted to have horses with me to take care of. But then it's, wow, a lot of responsibility, a lot of work. But I always wanted that. I always wanted that part of it. And when my dad was transferred up to Canada for work from Texas, and my mom was devastated. They were small town, born and raised Texans, and this was a huge step for them. And my mom told my dad, "We'll go if this is what we need to do for your career, but we're going to take," at that point, we had just acquired a really nice show horse. We're going to take him. And so my dad went and he found a place, somebody that could train him. The first thing I wanted was, if we're going to move, could I have a horse out with me?
mm,
And so then my parents looked for an acreage to rent, and then we found a mare. She ended up being in foal, and so it was 2 for 1. And even the getting but it was my responsibility. I had to get up early every day. I had to take care of them every day. The only times that I can recall that I did not was one time I got snowed in at school, and my dad was snowed in at work, and my mom actually fed the horses, and then it was a whiteout and she almost got lost. She got disoriented going back to the house from the barn,
oh
and
gosh.
she told us later, "Hey, if the airport wasn't closed, I would have gotten a
I would
plane
have
and been
left.
out of here." I think she called it this godforsaken frozen whatever. She was upset and it was scary. But other than that, it was very much my responsibility, in spite of that, in spite of being a teenager and wanting to have fun with my friends and this and that. I never resented the work involved, the
Right. You
getting up,
loved
the
it.
feeding, the
Getting
chiseling out the
dirty and
ice with the water that was frozen. And so it's always been something that I've really
I
genuinely,
love it so much.
genuinely loved on every
Y
level, whether it's competitive or
yeah,
just as I have a few that are retired that I call pasture ornaments, because they're older, they have some issues, and
they're having a
they're
nice retirement. Yes.
exactly. They're expensive pasture ornaments and I love them dearly. So yeah, and I know you loved horses as well growing up,
Well,
and
and you
animals.
had a huge influence on me and our family gratefully. And I was just gonna say, I remember as a kid going to visit Melissa, Uncle Cole, and Aunt Melanie. And in the summers, it was beautiful. It wasn't a million degrees like in Texas.
Yeah,
But
but
we
the
would be
summers in Alberta were gorgeous. Yeah.
gorgeous. And we would go to Banff and we would hike. And one year we had to help build a porch or something. Like I remember, and I was
Right.
a groom, and I remember like falling asleep in my dinner because the
Right.
physical exertion.
A
And
lot.
I
That was a
remember,
lot of work.
yeah, and then coming to visit and in this and getting to ski and
Right.
loving that. But I also remember like skin freezes in 2 seconds. And I remember I was like, wait, what? And it
Yeah.
was always such an adventure. And I just wanted to, I'm so grateful that you introduced saddlebreds to us and showing because I wasn't very athletic, but I learned focus, determination, Discipline. I had this, you knew Patty Milligan. She was one of
Yes.
my heroes. She was my trainer in the Dallas
Yeah.
area. The very first show in San Antonio, I won. And she was like, "Don't get cocky. You were the best of the worst." Like she was,
Sounds
she was
like
like,
something Patty would
yeah, she
say.
was like tough love. And
Oh,
and one time she saw us, we messed up right in front of the judge. And she was like, "Don't give up, make up for it."
right,
I learned some of these things happened like 40, 50, a long time ago,
right,
but
right,
she's one of those people.
right.
And I'm so grateful. Real quick, I want to share something I think you're just going to love. Are you an expert in your field and you know you need to be out there more? And maybe you've tried to do video, but you really struggled with it, or you weren't consistent, or you weren't happy with your results. Then we should have a conversation. I love helping people just like you make engaging, connected, short form videos that have people lean in and want more. Look for the link in the show notes and we can set up a call and see if this is the right fit for you. It's time to get yourself out there and stop being the best kept secret. And we're back. And a lot of that was have to do with you guys sharing your love of horses. And Melissa, if somebody's listening and they don't know what an American saddlebred is, I know it's like the only true American breed.
I believe so. There may be others now, but originally they were bred in the United States. They started as our country was young, and then they were began breeding them with select stock right about the founding time, the time of the I think the first saddlebreds were 1700s. They wanted a horse that up to Civil War. In fact, several of the United States generals rode, I think for both sides, rode
Saddlebred.
saddlebreds. And they wanted a horse that was attractive, that could do light farm work during the day, that could pull the carriage to church on the weekend and be amiable and attractive. And then eventually these county fairs, they call them, started where they would take their best horse and compete. And that's where
That's how it
that
started.
started from. Yeah.
And was it a combination of like thoroughbreds? Because I always think of saddlebreds as like these beautiful, elegant, high-necked, high-stepping, beautiful
Right.
tails. They're just a
Right.
gorgeous breed. And I
Right.
know you can probably describe it better.
No, that originally I believe they had the Morgan horse was also a uniquely American breed.
Okay,
So the story of Justin Morgan had a horse. That's where the
right.
Morgan horse got its name from. So they
I
did take the Morgans. They took some really good thoroughbreds from England. They called it was a Narragansett Pacer, which is a little bit similar to what we call a standard bred. Those are the ones that trot and pace in harness mostly.
okay.
You'll see them on the racetrack. So there was selection of different breeds to try to create this wonderful horse that could be, like I said, both a family horse and a show horse. I have two saddlebreds here and one that's a half saddlebred, half Frisian.
Who is I'm in love with her. I know you love her, but I'm like I'm second. Like this mare is so gorgeous. Okay, I could go on. I'm horse fanning here. So you finished growing up in Canada, and then I know you went to college a couple places, and then when did you, so you'd always competed in like
Yeah, I
regional
did. I
things,
competed through high school into college a little bit. Dad was at that point, you need to focus and not, but I was determined to keep writing, so I did however I could,
right?
lease, half lease, whatever. I did go to Europe and did an internship, and that's when I first met and I had my first experience riding an Andalusian horse, which I also love. And
Tell us about that. That is a Spanish breed.
yes, they're a Spanish breed originally. I think Andalusians and Arabians are really the oldest two breeds of horses. And
That's
they
gorgeous.
both evolved in different parts of the world, but the Spanish horses mostly obviously in Europe, Spain, and then they branched out from there. And the Arabians obviously south of there. And so the Moors back during the Crusade days, the Moors were typically mounted on Arabians, and the Spaniards and the Knights, the Crusaders were predominantly mounted on Andalusians or some sort of Spanish stock. Today we have Andalusians and Lusitanos, which are basically the same breeds, but one's a Portuguese and one's Spanish. But Lipizzaners mares are also related. They're derived from Arabians.
Okay.
And so they were bred for different types of warfare. So when the knights would fight the Moors, they would have these big skirmishes and raids and whatnot. And the Arabian horse was bred for Bedouin warfare, where you run. They're other than a racehorse, they
They
have
are fast.
incredible. They have large noses. They're very fast, tremendous endurance even to this day. There's several different types of Arabians that have branched out, but they're very fast and they're very quick, typically not as large. So they're run in, steal what you need from the tent and get out,
And
and run as long as you have to without water. They have that, which is people use them for endurance trail rides to this day for that reason. And then the Spanish horses were a little rounder, a little thicker, big, strong rear ends, and they were made for hand-to-hand combat. You can imagine you have knights with armor and
all that
swords,
armor, right?
and so different attire, different type of fighting, and that's where the people, what they call high school, which is classical Spanish dressage at the highest levels, where they do like the courbette and the levade, these kinds of things. Those are basically derived from battle
Military.
moves,
Yeah,
when the horse is rearing, doing like what we would call a rear up, but it's a
right.
controlled rear where they're back on their haunches and their front. That was to protect the knight. If he's being hit head on, the horse would rear up and deflect the blow, or the kicking maneuvers that they would do would be if they were being attacked from the rear. There's a lot of beauty to it, but when you study it, that was historically those moves derived specifically from
So,
battle
like,
movements of the 1500s. 60,
my
go to
gosh,
any
and then
museum and paintings of these breeds, because
right because they were there.
that was,
Well, and
yeah,
if I was there, I would have been like, "Don't hurt the horse.
right,
Get the knight. Don't stab the horse.
exactly.
Shoot the
That's
knight."
right.
Like,
I know. I would have
like
such a hard
don't
time
hurt him.
doing that. Yeah, but that was a necessary
Well,
evil of
that's
the
cool. I
time.
mean,
But yeah,
thank
I
you
know
because
I would be
I'm always fascinated by like the history
right.
and how the breeds have evolved. And I've learned every time I get to hang out with you, I learn so much about horses. And for our listeners and our viewers, there is a world champion horse show in Louisville, Kentucky. And it is basically like the Olympics of American saddlebred. Right? You can compare it.
Correct. Correct.
Saddlebred, equitation, and pleasure, those are competitions, and it's equal to the Olympics of dressage and hunter jumper,
Right.
but they haven't gone fully Olympic, but they could. So
Right.
I'm just
Right.
trying to set the stage because you're so humble. So Melissa, you have to be at a certain level to even apply and go because it is very high level, very high stress and
Right.
expensive. You don't just go, you got to be at a certain level. It's
Right.
like the Boston Marathon. You don't just show up, you got to qualify. And
Exactly.
so, and you hear about the Louis, I've heard about it for years. It's on my bucket list to go. So tell us about the first time you went.
It it was something that I always aspired to, but then when we moved to Canada, then obviously I went to the Canadian Nationals there.
Right.
That was there, and that was great fun. Years later, I was married, I had my first child and the second one, and I started riding. I continued to ride and I started riding again, and I ended up getting a horse that was a lot nicer than I thought she was going to be. And then that kind of became a dream. And then the dream started becoming reality. And I remember when my trainer out here in Del Mar in California, she's always been a very honest, brutally honest, wonderful person, great instructor, international world class judge. And she said, if you win on the West Coast consistently, then it's justified that you go back east to Kentucky and compete at the World Grand Championships. But if you're not winning consistently out here, don't waste your money, don't waste your
Right.
time.
Right.
And I kept, her name was Jolie, this mare. Her name was Jolie Blonde. She's beautiful blonde, She was a beautiful blonde like Elaine, and she his hair had this blonde mane, and she was dark, rich red chestnut. And she just kept getting better and better. She was a little temperamental, but we figured her out. And then when, we started winning at the best shows out here, I was just enjoying myself. And my mom would show her in the driving. My mom liked to drive with the cart. That was her thing. And then one day
Melanie.
my trainer Ann said, I think I'm gonna take a few back east this summer, and I think I think you guys are ready. And I said, oh my gosh, I was all excited. And then I found out, oh, they were gonna fly the horses, not drive them, and then how much that was gonna cost.
Wow.
And then my parents and my husband, he was disinterested because it was expensive. And my parents were always willing to fan the flames of fun and
Yeah.
yeah, and passion. And so my daughter was about, I think she was about 7 at the time, and riding, and my son he would have been 4. And we all went. We flew to Kentucky, and Jolie flew, and we flew separately. Obviously, they call it Air Force One, the big plane that they have. They
I
have
had no
several, but the
idea.
big
I had no
that
idea
that
that happened.
flies them to wherever, Kentucky, back east, overseas. But anyway, they call it Air Horse One, and they literally trailer them to the airport. Usually it's Ontario Airport, and Tex Sutton has a big outfit that does that. These planes are specifically for the horses, and they trailer them. They get from the trailer to a ramp with high sides, and they get on in their stall, and off they go. So we all went, and I thought I was ready. And first class, you've got to go in, and the division I was showing in was intensely competitive, and I think they split the class like 3 ways, and each class had a ton, and it was awful.
It's like
It was,
the best of the
and
best.
and exactly. And you know what, these people now, many of them are friends of mine, are acquaintances of mine. I've matured. I've been back there many times now. So I'm not starstruck. I thought, oh my gosh,
Wow, I
that's so
would have
and so.
been
Oh my gosh,
like,
that's so. And so I was definitely, and I thought, my gosh, you really? Eh, But
here
I was.
I am.
I was so overwhelmed. And you get there, and it's glamour. It's a whole week plus of nonstop horse show, morning till night. And then you want to watch the horse, because the trainers will bring the horses out late at
To
night
work
and
and
work them where they think no one's watching. And of course, you want to see people are lined up in their golf carts, and it's right there. And
and just
at the
absolutely
fair, it
exquisite,
it is a
gorgeous.
rush. I mean, there's concerts, there's the fair, it's absolutely incredible how many people go to this, attend it. It's like nothing I've ever
And some of the
experienced in.
horses, they're valued at a quarter million.
Oh,
Like,
millions now. It's incredible. And even then, maybe the highest price one was maybe worth 1 million. But yeah, and these people that oh my gosh.
they
And
fly
so
in,
here I
whatever. Okay.
am, first time there, right? And there's my little mare that I bought for not a whole lot of money. And so we get all ready, and they open the gate, and we go in, and I'm not really sure what I was doing. I was just having a nice time. I was
Yeah.
smiling, and we were going around, and I was staying right on the rail, and all these horses were all over the place. And they're in there. You've got 3 judges, but you still need to be seen. If they don't see you, they can't
Right.
write you down. And if they
You're
don't
not,
write
you
you
think you're
down,
supposed to just go around on the rail, walk, trot,
right.
canter.
I
But
was on
like,
my own little merry-go-round all the
right.
way around
Toot,
the
toot.
outside. La 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 la.
But
And then I
like,
remember going past my trainer, and I remember her saying, you better wake up. They haven't even seen you. And I went, oh. And at that point, I did wake up, and I kind of maneuvered, and my ringsmanship started coming to play, and I put myself in a better spot to be seen. And at that point, it was over. I blew it. But I had such a magnificent time.
oh
It
yeah.
was an expensive lesson, because
Yep. Well,
if you don't get at least 6th, you don't get to go back in the championship. So the
okay.
bad news was I had a lovely time, and then
And
I
you
did
didn't make
nothing for the rest of the week except
right.
watch everybody else have a good time. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I could just, that old feeling, if I could just do it again.
Ah, I didn't know,
If
but
I just
yeah.
had one more chance,
Right.
so yeah, it was a tough lesson, but I learned it. And the next time I
Okay.
went, I
Well,
was
tell
ready.
us about the next time.
And it was a few years. It was a few years before I had the opportunity. Maybe I want to say maybe 3 years before I had the
Okay.
opportunity again. And
Same, different mirror. Different.
this was a different mare.
Okay.
A similar type, actually. Her barn name was Blondie, believe it or not. But she was a 5 gated mare. And
So for
this
the people,
time,
really quick, so the people who don't know, 5 gait, so most horses, hello, walk, trot, canter. And then
right,
there's two man-made gaits that are gorgeous. One is a slow gait, and then the fast version is the rack. And
right,
it's very staccato, and it's actually like you're gliding, but the horse is
right.
doing all this work.
It's super smooth to ride when it's done properly,
It's
but it's yeah, and it's very fast, and not
very
every
competitive too.
saddlebred can do it
Right.
correctly. So it's a bigger, it's more intense, more things to go wrong, more things to do right, so to speak. So yeah, I had an opportunity, and I we had done really well. Blondie and I had done really well, and yeah, we went back and we won our division, and then went back and were reserve world grand champions, and we were world champion and reserve world grand champion. But had I not had that first experience with
Yeah,
that was a
it prepped
complete
you.
failure, other than that I had fun, I wouldn't have been prepared. And I knew people more. I had been going
Yeah,
back
you
and,
weren't so green. And so
yeah,
you're on the rail going around, but then you also are like making specific
right.
cuts in front.
Exactly. In an arena, they call them the peacocks of the show ring, this breed. And the reason is they are show horses. The louder the
Gotcha.
the crowd cheers, the better they do. And in some breeds, like if you're at a very serious dressage show, for example, if you're watching the Olympics or if you've watched a World Games or anything like that, when they're competing, you can hear a pin drop.
Right. It's like,
Now, when they've saluted the judge and it's over with, yes, people will cheer.
right,
But it's entirely different.
different
And this
vibe.
is very much, these horses are adrenaline junkies and they love it. And the louder the better. And it gets loud there because there's a lot of people. And yeah, so it was a ton of fun. And I was very it was fun. Yeah,
I was like,
that
okay,
trip.
then fast forward and tell us about this next. Did you have another time there as the world champion?
I did. I've had a couple. And in the meantime, my daughter was it has is she still is. She's actually a trainer. She and her husband have a training barn back in Kentucky. She took competitiveness to a whole new level.
Yes.
And I took a back seat to supporting her dreams and goals because she was just super competitive and super gifted. And so we fostered that in her and went did World Cup with her, went to South Africa a couple of times and competed there. And she's won it at Louisville at the World Grand Champions multiple times. And
3 years in a row,
yeah, 3 years
which
in a
is
row, and which is not easy in one of the most competitive divisions there is. That was quite an accomplishment. And it's funny because the horse that she accomplished it with, she was the last horse that my daughter and my dad and I picked out together. And her name is Divine Asset. Now she's technically world champion, world grand champion, champion Divine Asset. She is here on the property. She's been a brood mare multiple times over. We kept her, retired her. She's got 2 world champion offspring so far, which is very exciting. And we're hoping we can get one more. And then she would add another accolade to her name, which she would be a broodmare Hall of Fame. She's not only she was a very special horse in many ways and a phenomenal ladies amateur 5 gated mare. Not easy. She was another one that taught my daughter some very hard lessons at the beginning.
these are high strung
Yes. And
horses.
she's very
They're
sensitive,
like
this mare. Yeah.
Lamborghinis.
Yeah,
Lamborghinis,
big
or,
time.
yeah.
And I remember I've been on her back a few times now, but I had back injury and whatnot. So I didn't ride for a little while. But one of my first times back riding, I'd been riding lesson horses. And then I went back to Kentucky and the gentleman who's now my son-in-law, Neil, and he was putting me on a couple horses in the barn. And I'm like, okay, wow, all right. The whole different than a lesson horse. And then he's, you want to ride the gray mare? Because we call her Peanut. That's her barn name, Divine Asset. Because why don't you step on the gray mare? And I thought, oh, okay, this is a big step up from anything I've just watching her. I knew this,
In a
right?
minute. Yeah.
And I'm like, I am just now back riding from several years of not
Injuries.
being able to. And I just remember that she's incredibly kind. You never get the feeling that she's one of these opportunists. We were trotting around and I thought, my gosh, what an adrenaline rush this is. Hang in there, Melissa. Don't embarrass yourself. So I was in a
Right.
hop on baby, let's go. And here we went. And I'm think I'm doing great. And Neil says, okay, you're doing good job, good job. And then he goes, just release just a little bit. And I'm thinking, I know better than to hold this horse strongly in her mouth because she's
Right.
not going to
Very
tolerate that. She's
sensitive.
very
Right.
sensitive. But I'm like, I don't feel like I'm holding too much, but I'm like, okay. And I literally took my little pinky and I swear I moved it maybe a quarter of an inch forward when he said that because I was petrified. I would never admit it to him, but I was like, I don't, first of all, I didn't want to mess the horse up. Second of all, I didn't want to fall. And so, slightest movement, and
And
it
she's
was
like,
like
whoa.
a cartoon. I was going, and it was absolutely a blast, a
Oh,
complete blast. But I thought, oh my gosh, there's a huge engine in here. I've never been on anything with that much power, like a tempest in a teacup, because you could
wow.
tell it was there. But she was very aware
Of her power.
that she was
Oh,
being a lady, which is not easy for her. Then when
oh
I
my
said,
God.
okay, let's go, then it was just like,
Woo!
holy smokes. So yeah,
I just,
that was
I love
pretty
that
memorable.
story. I
It
didn't know
was
the story.
it,
So,
it was fun. Yeah, it really was. I'm going to digress for a second because this ties into our journey with the concept of this executive leadership retreat and
yes.
including the horses and the environment of the ranch. We were talking about the Spaniards and the Crusaders and the Moors and all that. You hear these stories about how, in pictures, it's the truth. These Bedouins would take their Arabians into the tent with them. That's how closely connected they were with their horses. These Spaniards, if you read about Andalusian horses, they're very much a one on one horse. They look for somebody, one person to connect with in
That's
general.
our person.
Other breeds are like, oh, I can be your friend. I can be your friend. And they're a lot easier going. You can think about it. Okay. If you're a knight and you're off and that's your
Life
horse,
is in your horse's hands.
absolutely. And you better be buddies and you better trust that horse and it better be absolute. And so that's the evolution of horses can adjust their heart rate. You hear the thing that and it's true that if you're scared, they know it. They do know it. They pick up on that. If you're aggressive, depending on what your intentions are, they pick up on it very quickly. And like people, some horses are a little more sensitive than others, but every horse has the capability and they have the herd mentality. That's how they grow up. We've taken them, domesticated them, and put them in stalls, right? But in the wild, they're herd animals. And even I call it my little herd here. Some of them are in stalls. Some of them are in a kind of a more of an indoor outdoor situation, but they're very aware that's their group. And there's a leader, there's a male leader, there's a female leader. And if you watch them at night, even if they're in a stall, they're never all sleeping at the same time. So they watch, somebody's on guard, even though I don't know what they think is going to get them here, but it's just instinctual. So
Yeah.
keeping that in mind, the herd is very in tune with each other. So when we include ourselves in that, the horses have an ability to adjust their heart rate to ours from, I believe if it's 3 feet. So if we walk up and we're stressed, they pick up on that and they have the ability to lower their heart rate and cause our heart rate to lower as well. And this is a medical fact. You can Google what I'm saying. And so they're huge empathetic animals. They're empaths to the core. They're sensitive to the core. So you take that animal that has been domesticated along with us for years. We've got the Moors, we've got the Spaniards, then you've got the conquest of the New World, development of saddlebreds, like we were talking about the Civil War, where they were with soldiers and they fought and died on the battlefields together. And horses can really be healing. And if you give them a chance, it's fascinating. It's not only fascinating that they can help us. If I am sad, they know it.
Feel
Immediately
it.
they
It's
know it.
so intuitive.
And
Yeah.
if I'm happy, usually I go up, I talk to them all the time. If anybody had a camera on me, they'd think she's crazy. I go up there, I'm like, good morning. And they all have little pet names.
Oh yeah. I was
And
talking to them too. I was having so
I-
much fun. Did you have a good night's
yeah,
sleep?
yeah, and they respond to it. And they have a lot to teach us, especially in this day and age. And but they are there's a reason they use them for therapeutic riding. There's a reason they use horses for the Wounded Warriors Foundation,
Yeah.
and to heal people that have gone through severe trauma, because it's a huge rush to connect with an animal that's that strong and powerful, for
Big
one thing.
and powerful and
And
tender and sweet. Yeah.
right. And the horse that you might connect with the most is not maybe going to be the one I connect with the most. And the one that I think, oh God, oh, annoying. I can't quite connect with that one. And then somebody else will walk up and they're just in their pocket. That's how it is. They have a very special intuitive gift. And if we don't pay attention, and it's very easy to miss. But that's really, to me, as important or more so than the competitions. And my favorite stories that are recently are horses that were very traumatized when I got them from an auction, or had been abused, neglected, those kinds of things.
Oh,
And I
wow.
love the rehabilitation process, and also not just for selfless reasons. It helps me too. I lost one recently that was I think he was almost 25, and I had gotten him from a bankruptcy auction. And he was, at one time, I found out later, a gorgeous Andalusian stallion that was imported, and paid a lot of money for him as a baby. And, and he fell into interesting circumstances, and he was just a train wreck. He was a hot mess when I got him. And it took a lot of patience and a
He's
lot of
escaping.
time. Yeah, and a lot of love. And he was slow to trust, but if he was a real old soul, and when you gave him time, he would tell you. He would tell stories. He would go, oh, okay, I have stuff to talk about today. He would just walk right up and put his head down, and just, you could just tell
Oh,
he was sharing something. And yeah, that's our journey as a civilization, as people with animals. Our journey with them and our history with horses goes way, way back.
that's
And
right.
so we can use that, if you will, gain from it, learn from it, and things can be applied to our relationships with other people, our relationships in the business world. We all have that one coworker that you're like, I know he's not a bad guy, or I know she's not a bad gal. I know she's good at her, but we just don't
Mm.
get along. We don't
Or the
sync.
boss. Yeah.
Yeah, your boss. It's all, and but sometimes if you put a little different effort into it, and sometimes as people, we don't always realize what we're projecting to other
Right.
people. And so
Right.
it
Really.
teaches us,
Yeah.
okay, sometimes you have to adjust our heart rate, adjust our
Right.
essence, adjust our energy to others, so that we're not either as so intimidating, or so that we're coming into our power versus
Right.
stepping back. So there's a lot to be learned in
I love it.
many ways. So
And
yeah,
Melissa's place is so beautiful. It's this beautiful home on this in the foothills, and there's a horse track all through the town and
yeah,
hiking, and it's
best.
just beautiful. And then she has this magnificent backyard where she's sitting now with an outdoor stove and bar, and there's lots of places to sit. We're gonna have campfires and be under the stars. And then out further back up the hill is where the horses are on premise, and where we're going to be in the stalls and in the corral with them, working with them with our hands and our voices. And it's this process called At Liberty, which is mind blowing. And it's such a magical thing. I forgot to tell you this, Melissa. I used to always be like, I want to ride. I want to ride. And so when I first met Shadow, who is this magnificent Frisian black
Yeah,
stallion, black beauty, he
yeah,
had
big
this,
time.
and stallions are like, and most stallions that I've met are jerks. You're like,
Right.
oh,
Yeah,
he's pretty,
right.
but
Stay back. Yeah.
Yeah, but Shadow was like this magnificent creature, but he had this sweet, so he would nuzzle you and he might nip
Right.
at you a little bit, but it was all in play. And I
Yeah.
was mesmerized by him. And
Right.
I didn't even realize it because I remember it was here, and then we brought my friend Neil and we were trying to teach him,
Right.
and we were doing a bunch of different things, and we only had 3 days, and this was right before COVID. But I remember I
Right.
just had these moments with him, and I had all these pictures where and I had never had that experience from the ground. And when I went back to the East Coast, I could not stop talking about Shadow. My yoga friends were like, "You are so in love." And I
He
still
has a huge
realized,
fan base, that's for
yeah,
sure.
he did. Everybody fell in love with him, but
Yeah.
I realized like I had a healing interacting with these horses, just being around them, not even we got to ride, but there was a
Right.
connection that I had never connected
Right.
before. And then
Right.
I experienced that again and I was like, oh my gosh, we have to do a retreat here. This is going to be amazing.
Yes.
So I am so excited. Melissa is a fabulous hostess. The property is
Thank you.
gorgeous.
Well,
There's going to
thank you. That's a huge
lots
compliment.
Yeah, it is just a beautiful space, and these horses are so magical. And even though unfortunately we have lost our beloved Shadow and JP,
Yeah,
their
I
presence looking
know.
down on us, and we have lots of other beautiful ones. We have, I forget what is the Anna, what's the
Oh,
one? Arabella.
Arabella, yeah.
Oh my
She's
God,
Shadow's daughter, yeah.
she's so hot. She is
Yeah,
half
she is. She's
Frisian, half saddlebred, and all heart and feist and fire. And then her beautiful mother, who is Ella. I don't know why.
yes.
Anyway, she is a sweetheart. Anyway, I'm so delighted, and we're gonna have so much leading up to the event, and then the 4 days on property in deep a bubble of transformation and time with energy and time to yourself. And the promise is you're going to leave filled up, ready to go, ready to serve, huge breakthroughs in confidence, leadership, energy management, and really a new level of being able to be an authentic leader next level. Is there anything you want to add to that, Melissa?
I don't everything you said is just spot on, and I think it's like you said, it's a unique concept, it's a unique experience, and I'm very excited for us to embark on this journey, and I thank you for your compliments about the property and my hostessing abilities. She and but it is a very gracious property, and it's got a very special energy, and which is what drew me to it originally. The horses love it here and people love it here. People come in, they don't want to leave, which is a compliment.
I
I love
never
that.
want to leave. Every time I
I
come, I'm
love
like,
that.
I want to go. Yeah.
I know. And that's a good thing. That's how you want places to be. So yeah,
Awesome. And
and we've
we'll
got
be
lots of
doing
fun things to do. We have lots of
We have
hiking.
so
We
much
have
planned, and some of it will
yeah,
be optional in case you need time to process it. And we'll be
right.
doing some Q&As as we're leading up to it. And it's the second weekend in May. So that Thursday through Sunday, I want to say like the 8th through the 11th. So hold that
That
space.
sounds right.
And we've got the links coming soon, and there will be some Q&As that we're doing. And yeah, it's magical. Give yourself this gift. But Melissa, thank you so much for coming on the episode. And I'm going to have your stuff in the show notes if people want to reach out to you. You also have
Perfect.
many other fabulous projects going with real estate and your script writing and product placement. Yes.
Many hats.
Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you.
Bye.
Okay.